Madam President.
The senator from Iowa.
Thank you, Madam President. Today I rise on the 3-year anniversary of the tragic death of a constituent of mine, Sarah Root. On January 31st of 2016, the same day as her college graduation, Sarah was killed in nearby Omaha, Nebraska, by an illegal immigrant named Edwin Mejia. He was drag racing with a blood alcohol level more than 3 times the legal limit. Despite requests by local law enforcement, Immigration and Customs Enforcement failed to detain Mejia because of a nonsensical policy that allows ICE to use discretion when determining whether to detain an illegal immigrant. He posted bond. He was released. And 3 years later, remains a fugitive. 3 years, he's still a fugitive, denying Sarah's loved ones any sense of closure or justice. As a mom, I can't fathom the grief that her family and friends continue to feel after such a devastating loss. My own daughter is approaching the age where Sarah was killed. Just 21 years old, Sarah was bright, she was gifted, she was full of life and ready to take on the world. What a talented young lady. She had just graduated from Bellevue University with a 4.0 GPA. She was dedicated to her community and she wanted to pursue a career in criminal justice. Sarah had her whole future ahead of her, but her opportunity to make her mark on the world was taken away from her. Her life was tragically cut short. Yet even in death, Sarah touched the lives of others. Sarah saved 6 different individuals through her organ donation. Sadly, what happened to Sarah Root is not an isolated incident. We have seen this story play out time and time again in the 3 years since Sarah's killing. Innocent lives taken by criminals that entered the United States illegally through a porous border. Crimes committed by those here illegally are truly among the most heartbreaking and senseless. And that's because these crimes are completely preventable, as the perpetrators should not be in the United States in the first place. Although nothing can bring Sarah back to her family, we can ensure that ICE never makes the same mistake again. That's why I rise today and again join with my colleagues from Iowa and Nebraska, including Madam President. Thank you again for joining in this legislation. We are introducing Sarah's Law again in honor of Sarah Root. Sarah's Law would require that ICE take custody of a person who is in the country illegally and who is charged with a crime that seriously injures another person. Sarah's Law would also require better victim notification and amend the law to require that the federal government take custody of anyone who entered the United States legally but violated the terms of their immigration status or had their visa revoked and is later charged with a crime that resulted in the death or harm of another person. President Trump implemented parts of Sarah's law through an executive order in 2017, and I commend him for that. It included directing the Secretary of Homeland Security prioritizing the removal of criminals who are here illegally. The executive order also establishes an office to implement notification requirements of Sarah's law. Despite provisions of Sarah's law being put into place by President Trump's order, it is critical that the Senate take up this legislation in order to codify these enforcement priorities so that any future administration cannot remove these provisions. No family should ever have to endure such a tragedy, especially one that could have been prevented. The fact remains that Sarah's killer would not have been in our country if it wasn't for our country's broken immigration system. Sarah's law is common sense. It's common sense reform. It recognizes the simple fact that all criminals should be held accountable for their actions. How much more common sense can we be, folks? Common sense. Hold criminals accountable. We should not allow them simply to slip back into the shadows. I recognize that the immigration debate has become a political football. We see that every day here in Washington, D.C. But the security of our borders and enforcement of our immigration laws is not a game. We must honor the lives of these innocent victims and do better. We must work to stop future crimes. I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues to fulfill the promise that I made to Sarah's loving parents, Michelle Root and Scott Root. I will do everything I can to ensure that not one more parent has to go through what the Roots have faced, the loss of their daughter and the promise of justice. And with that, Madam President, again, I thank you for joining me on this legislation. It means a lot to this family and many others, and I will yield the floor. I would also note the absence of a quorum.